All right, everybody, welcome to Module 1 of our SEO course, Understanding SEO. So before we get into the actual practical step-by-step guides behind this course, first we have to have a basic understanding of what makes SEO work. If you remember in our last lesson, we talked about what SEO stands for. It's Search Engine Optimization. And really what that comes down to is all the techniques that build trust with Google so that Google shows your website in the search results. So let's get started and dive in, okay? Number 1, effective SEO comes down to one thing, and that is trust. Trust with Google. If Google trusts your site to be good, they will send you traffic. If they do not, they will send you no one. And trust is really composed of two main factors, authority and relevance. And we're going to break down exactly what is involved in each of those. Authority is essentially whether Google thinks that you are an expert on the topic, whether you are a business with credibility, whether you have been in existence for a while. It's a bunch of different factors. And relevance, obviously, is whether or not the term that is being searched for lines up with your business or website. So for example, if you're a wedding photographer and someone types in helicopter pilot, you are probably not going to show up even if you have authority because you are not relevant. Whereas if you're a wedding photographer and someone types wedding photography in your city, but you have poor SEO and Google doesn't know you're a wedding photographer, well, again, you are not going to show up because you have neither authority or relevance. So the question then is, what builds trust? So there are 10 key areas that Google looks at to determine your authority and relevance and develop that trust. We're going to look at those today, break them down, and in future videos, step by step, we're going to cover each of them and show you some steps you can take to address and build trust with Google. So here are 10 main factors Google looks at when they're determining your authority and your relevance. Okay, we're going to pop up this list and I'm going to talk you through the basics of what each mean. The first is site age. How long your website has been around. So the reason Google looks at this is because if your website was made yesterday or a week ago, it's only been around for a hot second, and Google says, well, this might be a scam, or this business might be out of business 6 months from now. So we're just going to hold off before we show this on the front page of our search results because we don't want to send people to a business we don't trust yet. So that is number 1, site age. And we're going to look at some different ways we can address each of these in future videos. Second is active content. Whether or not your site was just made, Google is still looking at your content to see if it's fresh. So if you've been around since 1995, but your last post was in January of 2003, your content is not active. And if people are not searching it, not currently engaging it, Google says, well, this can't be very relevant. Otherwise, there would be more activity on this website. So that can be whether the posts are new and fresh or whether visitors are commenting, sharing, etc. Number 3, we have load times. How quickly your website loads actually affects what Google thinks and how it rates your website. Whether you show up in search results can massively be impacted by how fast your website loads. Backlinks is probably the core of all SEO, and the largest factor out of all of these is the backlinks that your site has. Now, what is a backlink, you ask? Let's say that I found a funny article online and I have a blog about funny articles and I share that link on my blog. I'm directing customers or users towards that blog post, and then Google says, well, obviously this piece of content must be relevant and it must have authority because it's being shared by other websites. So that's what a backlink is. Anytime anyone, anywhere links to your website, that's a backlink. However, different backlinks have different amounts of kind of link juice is the term we'd use in SEO, but really what that comes down to is Google trusts backlinks from really significant websites more than they trust a backlink from a brand new website or a backlink from social media, etc. So where your backlinks come from really does matter as well, but primarily the number of backlinks is the key indicator to whether or not your site is ranking. So if you aren't ranking and all of these other things seem to be working for you, it's probably you just need to build some backlinks and you'll see results very quickly. Moving on, our next is kind of in line with this, social interaction. Whether people are engaging with your posts, sharing them on Facebook, talking about them, tweeting them, hashtagging them, Google does look at that. They look at all the data from traffic sources everywhere. So Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever it is, they are looking at it. We already covered search relevance, which is basically whether your topic is relevant to the search that is being inquired about. Now, one thing about search relevance is Google looks at your pages and your content to determine whether or not it's relevant to certain topics. So if I have a website on well, wedding photography, and all of my articles are on weddings in Maine, I'm probably never going to show up when someone searches for an LA wedding photographer because I've never referenced LA in my posts. Even though I might have really great backlinks, really great load times, really great site age, it all comes down to whether or not my content is relevant. So if you aren't using what's called keywords, which would be LA wedding photographer in this case, in your content somewhere, Google doesn't know you're relevant. So that's something we'll look at as well. Traffic is a key indicator to Google whether people trust your site, use your site. Google trusts you more if you're popular. So you want to be one of the popular kids when it comes to website design, and this is kind of the irony, chicken or the egg kind of situation. If you don't have traffic, you're not going to rank. However, if you don't rank, you don't get traffic. So we're going to look at different ways to get traffic to your site to begin with and get that started for Google. Just 3 more to go. Our next is security, and that is basically whether your website has an HTTPS certificate or HTTP. Now, you don't need to worry about what those terms mean. Basically, the S stands for secure, and we'll show you how to do that. It's really quick, simple, and makes a big difference. So that's a big advantage you will get from doing this. Next, we have direct Google searches. Whether people are searching for yourname.com actually is something Google looks at to determine whether or not you are relevant and have authority. And lastly, we have click-through and bounce rate. These are 2 different terms used in SEO. Click-through is essentially how many people land on your website and click through to another page, and then go to another page after that and another page after that. Basically, the more people are using and interacting with your site, Google says, oh, this must have great content on it. I'm going to link people to these pages because when they go here, they spend a lot of time here. And bounce rate is how many people spend a second on your website and then they hop off right away because obviously it wasn't what they were looking for. Or at least that's what Google says. So if someone lands on your homepage and doesn't go anywhere else on your website and they only spend 10, 15 seconds on your website, Google actually dings you. They say, oh, that couldn't have been what they were looking for. I won't show the next person searching for that because this person didn't like it, obviously. So those are the 10 main factors we're going to work on, and we're going to break down step by step how we can address and build each of those. So what it all comes down to is Google is smart. They're looking at a lot of different factors here and weighing them all together. There's no secret hot sauce you can pour onto your website and just instantly fix things, and you can't really cheat the system. It used to be that you could insert keywords, keywords again being the search terms that you want to rank for, and you could write those search terms 1,500 times on your website and all of a sudden you would just get linked to. However, Google doesn't do that anymore. They can see through that. And so we have to create actual engaging content, have actual people interacting with and sharing it, and then Google starts to trust our website. So because Google is smart, they know exactly what happens normally when a website is born. So this is what happens normally when a website is created. The site is created. They create some content, and then that content gets shared, whether that's by blogs, websites, other businesses, on directories, and people slowly start using that site. So Google is watching this whole process unfold. And now as users start using the site, they start searching for different things directly related to that business. They start sharing more posts. And so it's kind of this circular effect where the more content you create that gets shared, the more visitors you find, the more shares you get, etc. And Google's watching as a website slowly evolves and grows its customer base. And so what we're going to do in our SEO course is actually kind of follow a similar step. We're going to speed up the process, but we're going to do the effectively same thing. So here's our SEO game plan. This is what it all comes down to. This is what we're going to be doing here as we work together to rank your website. Step 1, we're going to research and roadmap. So desired keywords, and keywords again are search terms that you want to rank for. We're going to plan those out. Once we know what your desired customer is actually searching for, we are going to take a look at your website before we do anything else, and we're going to say, okay, what is working and what's not? We're going to create a SEO-friendly web design if necessary, or if you don't have a web design yet, we're going to look at some great things and best practices. And finally, we are going to create a content game plan. So essentially, we find a search term that we want to rank for. For instance, I live in Kelowna, Canada. Let's say I want to be a Kelowna wedding photographer. Well, I'm going to create content specifically around that keyword. Okay, so this is the step that most photographers miss. They create their website. They might have a few keywords spruced up into their images, but they don't actually create content. They don't create shareable content that starts generating traffic and building trust with Google. So that is step 1. We're going to create your roadmap. Step 2 of the whole process is we're going to create then and optimize your content. So we're going to take a look at what we can do to create viral worthy content. Things that people want to share. Once you have content that is being shared, all of a sudden everything gets so much easier. And finally, we will optimize that content for search. So there are specific things that Google is looking for, and we're going to talk about everything involved with that. There's keywords, there's metadata, there's image alt text, there's heading tags, all that fun stuff. We're going to explain it. It's going to be super simple, don't worry, and we are going to do that. Finally, once we have optimized and created our content, we are going to start generating traffic and social shares. So I'm going to show you some methods you can use to get people interacting with your content, to build valuable backlinks, and to complete the cycle. Remember, it's a cycle where if you have traffic, Google looks at you and starts ranking you so you get more traffic. So first we have to build the traffic, and we'll start that wheel rolling. And once it's rolling, it's really far easier to rank and to sustain. So to recap everything we covered in this module, ranking comes down to trust. That's all it is. If Google trusts your website, you have authority, and you have relevance, Google is going to rank your site. It's as simple as that, guys. So here are the 10 keys to trust. Remember, we've got site age, active content, load times, backlinks, social interaction, search relevance, traffic, security. You get it. There's a lot to go through in here, but we're going to cover each of those individually. It's going to be great. And finally, our strategy is going to be researching and road mapping our keywords, our content, our SEO best practices. After that, we are going to create and optimize content around those keywords that we have found. And finally, we are going to build traffic and social shares to get that cycle rolling, to build that authority and trust. Once we've done that, you will start ranking. Are you ready? Let's get into it. Head over to the next video. Okay, so now that we have actually talked about what factors determine how you rank in Google and whether you're showing up in search, and we've looked at 10 strategies that we are going to employ, it's time to get started on those strategies. But first, we have to actually decide which keywords, which search terms we actually want to show up for in Google. Because until we know that, we can't really work on anything. So that is the purpose of this video. Now, without further ado, let's hop over, and I'm going to show you one free tool, one paid tool to find keywords, and then I'm also going to give you a list that I've pre-researched on keywords that I think you should probably be targeting already, okay? So the first tool that we're going to look at is Ubersuggest. You can head to neilpatel.com/Ubersuggest. It's absolutely free, which is amazing, and that is why I'm giving it to you first. What you're going to do is search for your location and then whatever service you provide. So let's say I'm a San Diego wedding photographer. Type that in there, hit search, and what Ubersuggest is going to do, it's going to pull up the amount of searches that happen within that particular search term. It's going to pull up some keyword suggestions, as well as how hard or difficult it would be to rank for that term, and how much competition you have for paid ranking. So in this particular case, it looks like San Diego wedding photographer, go figure, is showing up as pretty easy to rank for overall, which is good. Paid difficulty, it looks like a lot of people are already paying to rank for this term, so it's going to be medium. And as we scroll down, we can see how many searches there are for this particular term. And in my experience, this metric is a little bit out. So if I were to type in the hometown that I'm from, so I put in Kelowna wedding photographer instead, and I search right there, it's going to pull up SEO difficulty. Interesting, is slightly harder than San Diego, but paid difficulty, no one is paying for paid ads. However, the search volume is only at 10 searches per month, and that's just not accurate. I know that because I already rank for this term, and I have probably 200 visits per day just from the different terms that I rank for. So I know it's higher than 10 searches per month. So don't feel like if your term isn't searching that much that is actually accurate. It's not. But when you scroll down here, you have some keyword ideas based on what people search for surrounding that keyword. So we have Kelowna wedding photographer, photographers, photography prices, photography, photographer in your city, wedding photographer in your city. And so we can view all keyword ideas here. And you can look at the different keywords as well as who is actually ranking. So right at the top is my website right now. It has the estimated visits from this particular term. Again, that's not correct. It's definitely higher than that. Number of social shares and domain score. So this can be really helpful. So the higher this number is, it's based, I think, out of 100. 100 being some website like Google or Facebook or Pinterest, a huge website. 1 being a brand new site with no backlinks, no authority in Google's eyes. So this can be helpful to see, okay, how much competition it takes. And what's interesting is Adrian Photographers actually have a domain score of only 6, and yet they're ranking number 2 for this term. So this can be super helpful actually, because what we're going to do is grab their URL, and we're going to head to a free backlink checker by Ahrefs, and we're going to see why it is that they're ranking and kind of figure out what we can do to basically copy what's working, right? So we're going to grab their URL, put it in ahrefs.com/backlink checker. It's a free tool which will tell us who is linking to their site. Remember, backlinks is a big contributor to how you rank. We're going to type this in here. They've got a domain rating of 12, only 130 backlinks, and 49 referring domains. So we can go through here, and what's really cool is it shows us exactly who is linking to them. And this can be very helpful because some of these sites, we can then go and say, okay, all I have to do is get a link on this site, and I am one step closer to ranking the same way that they are. So you can go through and find links. Some of them are going to be very easy to replicate. For instance, if it's a listing on a directory somewhere, you could very easily sign up for that. Some of them are going to be harder. Maybe it's a wedding bouquets that will make you swoon. For instance, they have a link on here. I would go through, I'd go open a new tab, scroll down here, and let's just type in Adrian C. Okay, so they have a photo credit right there. So we can maybe see if we can submit to Bridebox for a future post and get a link from them. Go through and do that sort of a thing for all of these. You can also go ahead and just grab their website and take a look. See what's working and what's not. So they're ranking number 2, and I can tell you Kelowna Wedding Photographers is right at the very top of this tab, so they're doing that well. They're HTTPS, so they are very secure. If we scroll down here, we have photographers in Kelowna. We have Okanagan Weddings, which is kind of the area that Kelowna is in. We have Lakeside Winery Weddings, which is kind of one of the main things that happens here in Kelowna, and Okanagan, BC, and worldwide. So they've listed their address here, so that's really great. Very fast page load time. And if we scroll over here to their blog, I'm sure that they have their keywords targeted in their posts as well. So for instance, as we scroll down here, we've got Kelowna Yacht Club Wedding and Cedar Creek Wedding, and I bet you throughout all of these they're going to have different tags for the different cities surrounding that area. So you can learn a lot just by looking through your competitors or even your friends' websites just to see what's working for them and how they're managing to do it. So we've got a lot of photos in here, but at the bottom here we have all of the locations. So that's something maybe you could add to your post, right? They've added the location for getting ready, for the ceremony, for the reception. So these are all venues within Kelowna that then they can start ranking for as well. Now, one last thing we can use this tool for is just to get an idea of how many backlinks we need to start ranking. So if we go through here and we grab our Kelowna Wedding Photographer results, we can grab the very top result, which happens to be our website, and put that in there. Go check backlinks. I'm not a robot. And we can see that it's got 1,954 backlinks, 304 domains. So I could write that down here and go 1,900, 1,950-ish, 304. And then I could go to website number 2, which was Adrian Photography. We would go through here, grab that. And I'm not going to bore you by going through this all one at a time. They've got 130 and 49. We're going to go through here once more, and we'll just grab one more. Let's say number 3, Carla Roslin. And we will go shebang, shaboom. And so if I were doing this for my website, I might go through the top 10 just out of curiosity, and then got 107 and 25. So you see a pattern here. Number 1 result, number 2 result, number 3 result. And we've got this large number, a slightly smaller number, and a slightly smaller number. And you're probably going to see that trend continue as you go. So backlinks do matter, and that's why it's so important that we build them. We're going to get started on that as soon as we have gone through and optimized our keywords and our existing content. So let's keep going. So we can view all of the different rankings, which is super helpful. Grab some keyword ideas and view by the amount of volume. So although the exact volume is not accurate on this, let's go back here to our overview. The exact volume isn't accurate, however, it does show you roughly what percentages of volume you're working for with different terms. So let's go back to San Diego and let's do family photographer this time. And you'll see our SEO difficulty is still easy, which is good. Search volume is a little low. Yes and no, again, we talked about that. But when we scroll down here to our different keyword ideas, we can see that our search volume is mainly for these top 2 inquiries, San Diego family photographer and family photographer in San Diego. So those are main ones. Now some little side categories that would still be worth targeting but aren't quite as important because the volume's not there. would be, San Diego family photographer mini session here, portrait photographers, family photographer, San Diego, California. So this just gives you some different ideas of keyword variations you can use. So for instance, I might have an article that targets family photographer in San Diego, but I would also, throughout that article, sprinkle some other keywords in here, such as San Diego family photographer mini session, or portrait photographers, or photographers in San Diego, California. So you're going to want to go through, find a list of keywords, and I've already done that for you. Based in my experience, what you're going to do is go through and grab your location, whatever that is, and then insert your information. So for example, if you were a photographer, these are some keywords you might want to target: your location, and then the type of photography you do, and then you just narrow it down and go through all of the different variations of those kind of searches. And I'd go through and I would write down my keywords, and then I would be done. So you can take these as a suggestion, or you can do your own research. Now, one other paid tool that you can consider if you're interested is Ahrefs, and Ahrefs allows you to plug in your competitor's website. So let's say that I was wanting to be a San Diego maternity photographer, if I could type. And number one on this list is Yelp, and then expertise, and then the number one actual photographer is Christine Marie Imagery. So I'm going to grab her link, and in Ahrefs I would go through, I would enter her URL right up here, and it would actually show me all the links to her site. It would show me the keywords that she is ranking for, and I can get some ideas of what I want to target based on what she is already ranking for and targeting herself. So that's a tool. I don't need to show you the in-depth. You can pay for it. It's $7 for 7 days, and well worth it if that sounds interesting to you. Okay, so go through, create your keywords. You can download this guide, and after that we will get moving. So now that we know exactly what keywords we're going to target, it is time to start focusing on the different factors that affect your ranking. And number one is site age. Now, for some of you, this might not be something you can negotiate, because there are really only two options when it comes to improving your site age. Option one is old-fashioned. You wait. So if you already have a domain, you already have a brand, and it is stuck, well, you're just going to have to wait a little for Google to start trusting your website. And that's okay. If you are doing everything else in this course, you're still going to see awesome results. If, however, you are flexible with your domain or haven't created a website, option two is to buy an aged domain. What does that mean? It means buying a website that someone created a long time ago, and basically buying that website, making that business your own, and building on their foundation. So you don't have to wait as long to start ranking. So let me show you how to do that if that is an option for you. If not, you can skip to the next video. So there are two main ways to go about purchasing an aged domain. Way number one is to get it from somebody you know or somebody that you can connect with. So you could head over to Facebook, for instance, and look up, let's say, Virginia Wedding Photography. If I'm a wedding photographer in Virginia, I'm already a member of this group. If I wasn't, I would just click it and click join, and then I'd go in here and I'd type something like, hey guys, random question, but just moved to, or just starting in Nova and looking to get into wedding photography. Anybody retiring or know someone who would be interested in selling their domain? And of course, whether you're a photographer, a contractor, a plumber, a web designer, the same thing applies. You want to find out where those groups are and just go and message in those groups. Let me know, PM, and we'll chat. Thanks, friends. So I would go through and I would post this to this particular photography group, or I could find different groups, and I would go ahead and even find, you don't necessarily have to be in your local area. You could look up, say, VSCO. A lot of photographers use VSCO, so I would just copy that post, and I would join all of these other groups and just post in here. And essentially, all you're doing is putting the word out. You're looking for a wedding photography website, and that's one of the easiest ways to get an age website, hopefully with backlinks and that sort of thing. Now, if this method isn't for you, it seems too time-consuming, or you don't want to pay too much, because this method, very few people are going to want to sell their domain for less than $500 or $1,000, which is well worth it if it's already producing results. But if you want a cheaper method, head over to method number 2. Ready? Let's do it. So we're going to head over here to auctions.godaddy.com, or you can head to any domain auctioner. You could just go into Google and type domain auction, right? And go with any of these results. We're going to explore GoDaddy auctions for now, and what I'm going to do at the top here is just enter in my keyword. So I want to have photography in my domain, and I just hit search. and it will show me all of the domains that are currently for sale that have expired. Expired means someone had the website and they just decided not to renew it for whatever reason. So we could be rocketanniephotography.com, Michael Ross Photography, but what I'm looking for is obviously one that is not branded with someone's specific name, because that would be a little bit hard to explain if my name is Ryan and I am rocketanniephotography.com. We're going to search by estimated value just because I find that a little bit easier. An estimated value is determined by them looking at the number of backlinks that are existing on the site, the amount of traffic it gets, a few different factors like that. And we're going to scroll down and find one that would work for anybody. So freshlookphotography.com, for instance, is for sale. So what I'm going to do, let's say I was interested in this website name, I would copy that and head over to our free backlink checker tool and just see what we're working with. Does this domain already have a bunch of backlinks, or is it just a website somebody created a long time ago and it isn't really worth much? So we're going to scroll. Okay, we have no backlinks for that particular website, so it's not really that valuable to us for ranking, except for the fact that it's aged. So we can go to the Wayback Machine, archive.org/web, and we're just going to enter that same URL. And what it's going to do is show us exactly when it was created. So it looks like the website was made in 2012, and we can even look at what the website looked like when it was first made. So we're going to look at August of 2012. And here is Fresh Look Website's first page, essentially. And if you want to, you could go and look at different versions of that particular website, explore what it had on it. The reason that you'd want to do this is, first off, because you want to know the domain is age. So this one was built in 2012. That's okay. If you could find something even further back, that would be better for Google's eyes. However, the main reason that you're checking this is to make sure there was no suspicious or weird content on the site. So the last thing you want to do is buy a website that used to, sell pornography or had some kind of explicit content on its site. So we're just going to double check that before we buy the domain. So let's go and check one more that might work. Let's say photographysmile.com. Why not? Let's say that was the name that we decided we loved. Let's go in here, check backlinks, see if we have anything. And it might take a while. Sometimes you'll find that there's 0 backlinks for a lot of these websites, and eventually you'll find one that has 50 or 60, and that's really great. Or if you don't care about the backlinks, you love the name and it's been in existence for a while, well, that's fine too. You can just go ahead, make sure that it has aged appropriately, and then buy that domain. It's really as simple as that. Then you're going to set it up the same way you would any other domain you've registered. So you can look on YouTube for different tutorials with that. I personally recommend using SiteGround for your hosting, and it's really easy. They have great customer support and they will help you out. So that is how you have an aged domain without having to wait the long process that you normally would. Okay, let's go on to the next video. Right, the next step in our SEO puzzle is active content. We want to be sure that our website is active and the content is fresh. Why? Because Google looks at recency as relevancy. If your content is recent, it is relevant in Google's eyes, or at least more relevant. So we want to make sure that we're updating our content and our website so that the last article was not written in 1982. Why? Because the last thing that you want is Google to look at your website and say, oh, this is amazing content, this is really great stuff, and then this is what they find, a ghost town with nothing going on. So producing fresh content can be a struggle, especially if you do not have many bookings or your work is seasonal. So let's go through a few ideas of what you can post for content to keep your website active. And here's my promise to you. If you post once per week for 6 months, you are going to see incredible results. So make sure that you are actually posting. That is the main thing. The strategy itself is not that complicated. Post often and do it consistently. If you do that, you will see results. So let's hop over and give you some content ideas. I would encourage you, just block out an hour per week. That's all you really need to produce a piece of content, and just do it once per week at the same time every single week, and you will be golden. So let's hop over, and I'm just going to show you my website and what I did when I was starting out. So this is my blog, and again, if you ever go to this website, which you might have already looked at it, you probably won't find it the most amazing website you've ever seen, and the photos are not the best photos you've ever seen. I guarantee it. And that is kind of an encouragement for you, because it doesn't mean you have to have absolutely stunning, perfect, amazing work before you can get bookings. I get tons of bookings, tons of requests. That's just because I'm using these strategies that I have given you. So let's go and look at some of my older stuff. This is back now, no judgments. These are very well hidden now in my website. They don't show up on the front page and you have to search to find them. But these are just examples of content I created back when I didn't have shoots. So I had, every once in a while, I had some photos that I would post, and I would really emphasize where that location was, and I would do keywords and that sort of thing. But then I started creating content for what brides were looking for, because mine is a wedding photography website. I wanted to create wedding-related articles. So if you do weddings, that's what you want to do. If you have a business selling cat toys, you want to do different articles surrounding cats. So different tips for cat owners and how to train your cat, how to litter box train, what kind of essential things do you need to know if you own a cat, all those kind of articles. So let me show you some ideas of how you come up with content. These are some of the little pieces that I put together. 10 most common wedding mistakes, free wedding planning resources, great photo shoot locations in the area. And this is one that I kind of struck gold by accident, Okanagan wedding venues. Now that's the kind of region. This is my city, Kelowna, and then here are some surrounding cities. I went through and I essentially found all of the wedding venues in the Okanagan, and I listed them in one big post. So let's just take a look at this really quickly. And I went through and I grabbed a photo of each, and I just put a little bit of info and a link to their website. Now, today I would do a much better job at this. I would do a little bit of a write-up on each. I would make it look a lot nicer, but this is back in the day when I was still figuring things out, had no idea how to do web design, and I just went through and I grabbed a bunch of venues and I posted it. And this isn't even all the venues in the area. They were just probably 20 of them. And what's really crazy about this particular article is it wound up getting me a ton of traffic, a ton of shares, a ton of traffic, and even today, probably 30 or 40% of all of my brides come through articles like this. If not this exact article, it still gets me a ton of traffic, and it's ranking #1 when people type, or at least it was at one point, for Okanagan wedding venues. That would be the top search result. So that's how crazy this content is. You want to create stuff, hopefully, that is local to your location when possible. So for instance, if you're a dog trainer in Vancouver, you'd want to write articles surrounding that location. So you might look up the Vancouver area and say, okay, here's an article on Burnaby dog parks, or here's dog-friendly beaches in the Vancouver area. 10 great places to walk your dog in Yaletown. Those kind of articles are very specific to a location, and therefore the people who read them are going to probably be from that location and more likely to do business with you if you happen to have a local business. Now, obviously, if you have an online business, that doesn't apply quite as much. You can take general articles and do business with people around the world. But if you have a local business, make sure you're being aware of that and targeting location-specific keywords. And you can get content ideas, again, by going back to Neil Patel's Uber Suggest. Go through here, and we're just going to put in your location and an area of interest for your customers. So let's say that you are a photographer in, what do we got, Detroit? Wedding. And we'll just put wedding, not wedding photography. Then we go through, and we'll just have some keyword overview, and some suggestions will pop up. So it's just pulling that up, and we've got the most beautiful wedding venues in Detroit. Compare prices for all the wedding venues. Reception wedding venues. Inexpensive wedding venues. Unique Detroit wedding venues. And so what I could do is I could even go in and say, okay, this is top result #1. I could go through, and I could borrow some of their information. Now, I'm going to rewrite it, obviously. I'm not going to just copy it and copy the images and put it on my website. That would be a recipe for a disaster. But in general, see how they have used their photos from Instagram, taken it right across, and just added some information. It's super easy, super simple, and you can take this information. I could take all of these top posts, and I could grab every single wedding venue across all of them, compile it all on my website, and all of a sudden, brides in Detroit are going to come to my website looking for wedding venues. And in the process, I know that they're not necessarily looking for photography at that exact moment, but they are going to see that they're on ryanbrightwrightsphotography.com, and then they might check out some of my images, or I can even sprinkle some of mine throughout the article. So let me show you another way you can come up with content. Let's just go in here and go wedding planning on Pinterest, and bam, we have all of these content ideas right here. So you can go through and say, okay, sample wedding budgets from $2K to $3K, $30K, that sounds great. 50 mistakes every bride makes. Now you can rework these to any type of business. So for instance, you have a kayak shop. This could be 50 mistakes every beginning kayaker makes. We scroll down here, get your free printable wedding binder. That could be if you do business coaching, click here to get your free business coaching checklist or your free business planning checklist. Just remake these articles into something of your own. And it doesn't have to be complicated. If you are not a writer, for instance, let's go through here. 8 ways to surprise your groom on the day. So I could go through here, and if I wanted to, I'm not going to copy it exactly, but I could go through, grab, let's close this pop-up. Go through, grab all this text. Dun, 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 dun. Perfect. What an ugly mess. We'll just delete all of these photos. Bam, I've got my text, okay? So I could literally go through here, create a separate new document, and just rewrite as I go. I don't have to be an expert. I don't have to come up with all of this content out of the top of my head. I could go through and say, okay, first line is when it comes to planning a wedding. When you're planning a wedding, it's pretty common for the groom to be overlooked. Right, and I would just go through and I would rewrite exactly what is here. Now, it's not about copying people. You want to produce your own content when you can, but that is just a really easy way to produce content, especially if you struggle with writing, okay? It's not about copying, but it is okay to borrow. Picasso himself said, one of the greatest artists of all time, good artist copy. Oh, sorry. Yeah, good artist copy, great artists steal. So it's okay to take what is good and what is working from somebody else's article and mix up your own article. I would take 4 or 5 different articles on a similar topic, and then I would mesh them all together into the top tips. So this is 8 ways to surprise a groom. Maybe I'd take 4 different articles and put together 29 ways to surprise your groom on the big day. Okay, so that is how to come up with content. Your action item for this particular section is to post once per week for the next 6 months. So take out your phone, take out your calendar, whatever it is, and write in that slotted time. If you don't do it, it's not going to happen. If you don't schedule it, you are not going to remember. You're going to get busy. Things are going to get bogged down. And this is one of those things where consistency is what pays off. It's consistently taking the right actions over time that you're going to see the best results. So that is it for this video. Hey there, welcome to the next section of our SEO workshop. In this video, we are going to be talking about one of the huge factors to website ranking, and that is load times. So you might remember the days when you still had dial-up internet and you had to make sure no one was on the phone in your house, and you had to wait for a website to load for 5 or 10 minutes before you could use it. And it was terrible. And because it was terrible, Google said people don't want to wait for websites to load. We are going to favor websites in the search results that load faster. And the same is true today. So having a fast loading site makes a huge difference in your rankings. I remember when I made some of these changes I'm going to share with you, I moved from page 4 up to page 2 overnight. It was as simple as just changing a few things in my site so that it loaded faster. So let's hop in and look at some of the factors that affect your load times. The first is web hosting. So what is web hosting? Essentially, when you have a website, you have what's called a host. And the host is a big computer somewhere in, America or Australia or Singapore, wherever it is. It's called a server, and it holds all of your website's data. And now you have a customer who comes, and they want to access your site. So basically their computer talks to this computer and says, hey, I want to see this data. And that computer says, okay, here are the images, here's the information, here's the code, blah, 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 blah. Now, basically, the faster your host is, the better your load experience is going to be. It responds faster, it delivers the images faster, it delivers the content better, and so you're going to have better rankings simply because of your hosting. So that is the easiest thing to change if you're not loading very quickly, is your web hosting. Now, who do I recommend for hosting? Hands down, SiteGround. Why? I will tell you why in a second, but essentially if you sign up for SiteGround, They have a big computer that they host your website on, same as GoDaddy or HostGator. The difference with SiteGround is that they've consistently been voted the very top performing web host, both for load times, for security, for features, and for price. So I'm even going to hook you up with a web code if you want to switch over to SiteGround today. That will give you, I think, 40% off. Anyways, I will put that in the video so it will show up somewhere below. So that is the simplest thing you can do if you want to switch host, say, to SiteGround. It's as easy as just hitting this little help button, and you can ask them. They have a live chat where you can get them to migrate everything over for you for free. It's super quick, super simple. I did this back in January, made a big difference. So that's hosting. Okay, the next factor that affects web loading and page speed is your image sizes. So a lot of business owners make the mistake of assuming that they want the highest quality photos possible for people to see. So when they go and they put them on their website and the files are, 20 megabytes or 10 megabytes or 5 megabytes, it doesn't matter. Those are still huge file sizes. Let me walk you through what you have to do. Let's say you need to get some images for your website. A great spot for that is unsplash.com, where you can download free images and use them on your website without having to pay any licensing, any royalties. You just download it, upload, you're done. Okay, so let's say that I'm selling shoes and I like this photo of a pair of shoes. I'm going to download that and then I'm going to open it up. Let's take a look here. So the original file, if I go over to Finder and look at the size, is 4.2 megabytes. That's absolutely huge. And I'll show you how to fix that in a second. I've opened it in Preview, which is a free application that comes on your Mac if you have one. And then we go up to Tools, Adjust Size. We can see that the width of this image is 3,800 pixels. The height is 5,600. Now, on web, in general, you do not need to have an image with a width of more than 1,600 pixels. And even that, for some people, will be overdoing it. So what we want to do is make sure we resize our images appropriately for the web. So I'm going to take this image, resize it like that, and you'll see that it's gone down by 42%, or to 42% of the original size. So it's only 680 kilobytes, where before it was, 8 times as large at 4.2 megabytes. So we're going to hit OK. You can see it's now smaller, but even if I zoom in, it still looks like a great photo. So then I would upload it to my website from there after resizing it. So that's how you can do it for free on a Mac. Another tool that you can use is just put in here Image Resizer. We can go to simpleimageresizer.com. And you might actually have a free tool on Windows. I haven't used Windows recently, so I can't tell you for sure, but here's one right on the internet. Go ahead, open, we're going to select it. And then we can put in our dimensions here, and we just want to have a width of 1600. We'd hit resize, and it would resize it for us. Okay? Now, one last step you can take if you want to make sure your images are as small as possible is to go to imagecompressor.com. This is a free tool online you can go to, and we're going to go to Upload Files. We're going to find our image. Here we go. And then we're going to let it just do its thing. It's going to compress that image, which is basically going to make it smaller without reducing the quality in much of a visible way. So you can see that when we zoom way in here, this one, if you're looking very closely, has slightly less detail. But when we zoom out to the size you'd normally see it on your website, well, that's not the zoom, that is the quality. You can adjust your quality from there if you decide you want it to be slightly higher or lower quality. But when we zoom out, you won't even notice the difference. And we've saved 21% of our file size. So that's all going to help, especially when you accumulate this over 10 images or over 100 images, whatever it is on your entire website, it's going to make a large difference. So make sure you're doing that as you're uploading your images. You want to aim for a width of no more than 1600 pixels. And then you can compress those images before uploading them to your site. If you're using something like WordPress that you can actually install plugins, so we're going to let's go to Signature Edits. You can actually install a plugin here. Go into Install Plugins, Add New. And we're just going to type in Smush It. Now this plugin will actually automatically compress your images on the way in. And it can even compress images that are already inside of your site. So just look up tutorials for that, but I would just hit Install Now and add it. I don't need to because I have a different plugin happening, I think, on here. My theme just takes care of it by itself, and I make sure to export my images small to begin with. So that's something that you can do. Image size will make a huge difference in the speed of your pages loading. And now the pages that you want to prioritize on your website are these ones up in the menu. You don't need to necessarily worry about going through all your old posts and optimizing them, although if they're getting lots of traffic or you're featuring them on the homepage, you should. But the main images you want to make sure are as small as possible is everything on your homepage and everything on these pages right here. You want these pages to also load very, very quickly. So you can see that one could maybe do with some work because it took a while to load, or it might just be my server. And I've gone through and all of these images are optimized, and you'll notice that on my pages, I have one image on each page. And that is strategic because I want the page to be as small a file size as possible to load as quickly as possible. With the exception of my homepage, and even my homepage, I have every single featured image for my posts are optimized, so I've resized them. They're only this large. Rather than being full-size images, they're only 300 by 300 pixels. And then this image here, I've even compressed it. It's smaller than it would be, and I've repeated it over here just so that I didn't have to make it a larger file. So that's what you can do to work on your load speed with your images. Let's hop over to our next factor here, which is caking. What is caking? It is not baking in any way, shape, or form, although I wish it were. That would be way more fun. Caking is essentially what a website program does to make your code as small as possible. So you don't have to concern yourself too much with the technicalities of all this, but here's the code for my website for the homepage to load. Now, a caking plugin will go through and say, okay, this little section we can actually shorten by kind of making this abbreviation here. And the length of this code determines how fast, in a large way, that your website is loading. So let me show you an example. Go back to my Signature Edits blog. I have what do I have for caking? I think it's W3 Fastest Cake, but let me show you exactly what I'm using. I've tested all of the different caking plugins, and they're all pretty good. Some work better with certain themes than others. If you're using something like WordPress or Wix, you're going to have to just YouTube caking plugins for WordPress or Wix. I don't think that they actually support that. I'm pretty sure that WordPress is the only one. However, Squarespace handles it behind the scenes, and so does Wix. So you might not have to concern yourself with that if you're using one of those platforms. But let's go through here and just show you which caking plugin I'm using right now, which is WP Fastest Cake. And I've actually even bought the paid version, but this plugin is completely free to start, and you don't need to buy the paid version unless you want to do specific things. And then there's also W3 Total Cake. Actually, let's just type in here. You can go to Plugins, Add New. We're going to search for caking. And I've tested a lot of these. I found that WP Fastest is the best across the board for my websites. However, WP Super Cake works better for certain themes, as does W3 Total Cake. So it's really up to you. You can just test and see. Let me show you kind of what it's doing behind the scenes. So I'm going to go to my install plugins. And then we'll just Fastest Cake. Where are you? There we go. I'm going to test my page load speed by going to Pingdom Tools. And we're just going to type in here signatureedits.com, and tools.pingdom.com will actually tell you how large your website is and show you what areas of your site you can work on. Whether it's the image sizes, whether it's the code, it will give you a score, which is super, super helpful to know what you need to work on. Another one that you can do the same thing is Google PageSpeed Insights. So just type PageSpeed Insights into a Google search and this will come up. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to edit my put in my URL here, and it will analyze and tell me what I can work on in the eyes of Google, which is super important because probably Google's opinion of my site matters more than Pingdom Tools. So once those tests have finished, Pingdom will actually pull up a list of suggestions and an overall rating for the website. So this particular website is not doing great. I still have work to do when it comes to signature edits. It's only 69 out of 100 for the performance grade, and the page size is 3.4 megabytes, which is quite large. I need to make sure I go back and minimize the size of my images, make it as efficient as possible so I can get this load time even faster. Now, in general, I'm under 2 seconds in terms of load time. If I could get that under a second, I would be super, super happy. 2 seconds is good. Under a second is great. Anything longer than that, and you're going to see significant decreases in your ranking and your SEO simply because your page is not loading fast enough. So you need to work on that. And that's what I'm going to show you with this caking plugin, the difference that it makes in a second here. So if we continue down our test, you can see different suggestions that they have for us with some information on what we need to do. And then we can look at the size of content over, this whole homepage was 3.4 megabytes. Well, if we scroll down here, you can see that 1.7 megabytes was just the images. So again, that's why it's so important to resize our images efficiently and make our website, particularly our homepage, as fast loading and as minimal as possible. This is going to make sure that we just rank at the very top performing level. Okay, now if we jump over to PageSpeed Insights, it's going to do something similar. You can preview both desktop and mobile, your score for that. On desktop, I'm doing all right with a score of 80. If we scroll down here, it will give us just different information on how long things take to load, and then Google suggestions for where I could improve what I'm doing. Okay, now let me show you with and without caking. So these are the results with caking, which actually is pronounced caching, but caking just sounds so much more delicious. I'm going to scroll down here and we're going to go to plugins, install plugins, and we're just going to turn off the caking plugin and run this test again. So I will go over here. We're just going to deactivate this plugin. Okay, I'm going to make sure that I reload the website just to make sure that change is affected. And then we're going to go over to tools.pingdom again. And I'm going to enter in the website all over again and test it a second time. Now I need to make sure it's testing from the same spot, North America, San Francisco. Go down here, we'll put in signatureedits.com. And we'll run that test again. Now page speed insights, I can do the same thing. So we'll just go Google, page speed insights. There you go. We'll let that do its thing. And now that that test is done, we can scroll down here and see that our performance is mostly the same, our page size is mostly the same, but our load time has actually gone from 1.9 seconds all the way up to 2.3 seconds. Now that is significant. It might not sound significant to you on the surface, but that will make a big difference in your rankings. Sometimes you'll actually find that your caching, caking plugin can save you 2, 3, 4, even 5 seconds of load time. It's that big of a deal. If we hop over to our page insights tool, you can see that we went from a solid 80 in the orange to 42 very much in the red, and we had a load time of 3.3 seconds, whereas before it was 2.2 seconds. So that's what the caching plugin does. You want to make sure that if you're using WordPress or if that whatever host you're using supports caching, caking, whatever you want to call it, you want to make sure that you have that enabled, okay? So you can plug your website into each of these and just see how you're doing. Again, I'll just show you taylorphotography.com. We'll run that test. You can see that my website is doing a lot better here. And see this gray box? It's not showing that top image here. And that's good. That means that it's deferring loading until after the visitors already landed on the website, which speeds up the load time immensely. Great, so that is caking and how it works. You want to just add that plugin to your site or look it up if you're using Wix or Squarespace, what you can do for those specifics. And lastly, we want to use a content delivery network, a CDN, with our images and our resources from the website if possible. But before I show you how to set one up, let me tell you what a content delivery network is and why you want one. So here is an example of a content delivery network. Now don't get too concerned about this. I'm going to explain it step by step in an easy way. Let's say that you are this user here in South America and you want to access a website that is hosted. So remember, our host might be located in America or in Asia or in Australia. It all depends. Australia is over there. So let's say that you are accessing the site that is normally in Australia. Okay? So normally, if you didn't have a CDN, you would have to go and wait for all the information to come all the way from Australia back to you in Chile or wherever you are. Now, a content delivery network actually creates multiple copies of your website in different places around the world. So now if you're in Chile and you want to access your particular website, you type it in, and instead of it going all the way to Australia, don't you love my sound effects? It goes up to the nearest server, which in this case is somewhere in Florida or Texas or somewhere around there. And so the round trip is way faster to get the information that you need because it's only this distance instead of going all the way over here. So that's what a content delivery network is. It's a satellite version of your website hosted in different places around the world so that when people access your website, it's faster. So if someone from Peru wants to get to your website, it goes here. If someone from Australia wants to get to your website, it accesses that information from here, etc., etc., etc. So that's a CDN. Let me show you how to set one up. What's really cool, and one of the reasons I recommend SiteGround so much, is it comes with a CDN that you can use for free. And it's super easy to set up. All you have to do is just a couple of clicks. So I'm going to log in here to SiteGround. And now that I'm logged in, just go to My Account, and then I'm going to launch cPanel here. Log in from there. I just go down to where it says Site Improvement Tools. I click on Cloudflare. And it's going to be as simple as just checking the box. I want to activate my free Cloudflare on my website. So I'm going to activate, wait for it to load, And just like that, within about 10-15 seconds, you will have your very own Cloudflare set up. And just like that, your CDN has been activated and you're one step closer to dominating in local search. So that is it for our load times workshop. You have 4 things that you need to work on, okay? The first is getting a great host. I would recommend switching to SiteGround if possible. It's going to save you money in the long term and you're going to load way faster as a result and rank better. And for like $4 a month starting, it certainly is worth the money. The next thing that you're going to want to work on is your image sizes. So when you're exporting images to your website, only make them as wide as you need them to be, no larger than that. So I would recommend at a max 1200 pixels for your images, unless they are a full page image on your homepage, in which case you're going to want to export it maybe a little larger. 1920 would be fine for your width, and then make sure you put them through an image compressor, okay? After you have done that and installed a compressor plugin, if you're using WordPress, you're going to work on your caking by installing something like W3 Total Cake or WordPress Fastest Cake. And then after that, you are going to work on your CDN by activating a content delivery network. Now, this is optional. I ranked my website and was on #1 well before I applied this. However, who knows? It might have happened a lot faster had I taken all of these steps instead of just some of them. Okay, so that is it for our web speed tutorial. I will see you in the next video where we tackle our next project.